Hey, what's happening, everybody? This is the reboot of Cooking with Frag. We're doing this because of the Patreon. I'm really excited about this. We have a new format, a new layout, and I'm incredibly excited to get cooking again. We'd previously done around 32 episodes cooking with Frag. Let's just get started. We're going to head over to the pantry. We'll talk about the ingredients that we're going to be using for our lo mein dish. And talk a little bit about organization as well. Alrighty, so we have the base for our sauce, which is some sugar. Ashley will link up the recipe that was posted on the Patreon page, as it will be every time.
Says audio's really low.
We have some scallions, garlic, and ginger. Onion. Pre-cooked lo mein noodles. We use dry noodles here and just cook them for a couple minutes till they're al dente. Toss them in a little bit of oil and went from there. For the base for our sauce, we're going to have soy sauce, tamari soy sauce, which is a Japanese soy sauce. It's much richer and darker. Generally uses less wheat, but that depends on the brand. Sesame oil, bok choy, and snap peas. Okay, so if you're new to cooking, one thing I highly recommend doing is get everything that you're going to use in one place. Designate one section of your counter for food and food-related products in your pots and pans before you even get started cooking. This way you know where you're at. So what I'm going to do is take my equipment and put it in the right place before we even start touching the food. So here I have my pan with oil and my serving dish, as well as my utensil. So we're going to head over to the stove. This is our cooking oil we'll be using when we get started, and our serving bowl. So this way when we get done cooking we know where everything is. I don't have to run over and grab a new dish. We call this mise en place, which means everything in its place. So we're going to set everything up beforehand so that we're good to go. Alright, we're going to move our ingredients over to the cutting board and talk about what we're going to do with these. Alright, so we have all our veggies and noodles here. Just going to move the noodles over to the stove real quick. So this is a relatively simple dish. I firmly believe that to be a good cook, you don't have to be naturally gifted at it. All you have to do is have attention to detail and be willing to learn. Everything that I cook, I always find something... One second. Alright, sorry for the delay. We move into a different audio setup soon, but thanks for your patience. Alright, so we have our sauce ingredients here. We're going to read off the stuff that goes in the sauce. We have 1.5 tablespoons sugar, which we're going to dissolve with hot water. We're going to use 2 tablespoons soy sauce, 1 tablespoon tamari, 2 teaspoons sesame oil, and 5 spices to taste. This will be the base for our lo mein noodle sauce. So, we're going to take this. I'm just going to run it under some hot water real quick, just a few drops to dissolve it. Probably have approximately a tablespoon of water in there. Just going to move it around to dissolve the sugar. Granted, this will also dissolve when you cook it, but you want to get it mostly dissolved beforehand. A little warm water will do the trick, no problem. Alrighty. So we have regular soy sauce, 2 tablespoons. Two tablespoons is also 1 ounce. Alright, 2 teaspoons sesame oil. Place this over here now. Alright, the tamari sauce. This stuff is pretty potent, in my opinion. Not a bad thing, though. Smells delicious. Alright. 1 tablespoon there. And then all we have left is the 5 spice. Let's read off the ingredients of 5 spice. I need to refresh myself anyways. Cinnamon, anise star, clove, ginger, and fennel seed. It's pretty powerful stuff. I like using 5 spice on rubs and whatnot, but very strong flavoring. Okay. Just going to give this a little stir and a taste and make any adjustments are needed. There's always room for adjustment and improvement when you cook. Every time you cook, you should taste your food. When you're cooking, taste it once you're done, and decide if there's anything you want to change. Okay. It's pretty darn good if I don't say so myself. Alright, we're going to wipe up our cutting board real quick, and then we're going to get to chopping. When you're cooking anything that has lots of ingredients, you want to decide what you're going to cook first. So we're working with, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different ingredients as far as vegetables go. We have to figure out what is the proper order to put things in. And generally you want to start with your fragrant things like garlic and ginger first, which is what we're going to do here. This will lay the base for the flavor of the entire dish. We're going to heat up the oil in the pan and then add this, and that'll flavor the oil, which will coat everything else, which adds a nice base flavor for the dish. So we're going to cut this into sheets. Stack up those sheets. Cut it into strips. And cut those strips into cubes, more or less. The uniformity of the ginger and the garlic and stuff, not as big of a deal. I'm going to rough chop everything after the fact anyhow. A little bit more here. Alright, going to do the same thing with the garlic. Going to cut it into sheets here and then go from there. I'm using elephant garlic. Elephant garlic is really easy to work with. Since it's much larger, it's a lot easier than peeling individual cloves of garlic. If you don't have something like a food processor, getting enough garlic can be kind of a nightmare. I've been out of the kitchen for about 3 years now. Yeah, a little over 3 years. So I'm definitely still rusty. I'll be the first to admit that I make plenty of mistakes when cooking, as does everybody else. Even the best cooks in the world still make mistakes. It's a matter of being able to recognize your mistakes and improve. Okay, so we're going to take the scallions here and use the white portion of the scallion to add to our ginger and garlic. The white portion sautés quite well. The green portion generally is used as more of a garnish or an addition after the cooking. Alright, cut off that bit, and we're going to slice some of this. Don't need to worry about too much about the shape of it, as we're just going to rough chop everything back together. That should do. I don't mind big chunks of garlic and stuff in my food, but you don't have anything too big, so if it doesn't cook properly, then you get a really gnarly acidic bite of garlic. Okay, we're going to take this, put it in the bowl here, and this will be the start of our dish. And we're also going to take a towel and clean off our cutting board and knife. You should always have a waste bowl next to your station. This way you don't have to run back and forth to the garbage can. You can just dump everything in the waste bowl and go from there. There it is. Alright, now moving on to the green portion of the scallions. What I'm going to do with these, you have a couple options. You can cut them long ways for kind of strings. You can cut them in circles. What I like to do is lay them out like this and put my knife on an extreme bias and then cut like so, as thinly as possible. I think this adds a really nice flavor on the tongue when you use it as a garnish, as well as it looks pretty cool. Okay, so you end up with something like that. I'm going to put these up in the corner of the cutting board because we're not going to use those till after the dish is served. Move these over here. One of the best things you can invest in for cooking if you own a nice knife is a steel. If you don't steel your knife, it will never keep its edge. Each time you make a cut on a cutting board, it creates a micro abrasion. So the steel is what removes those micro abrasions and keeps your knife plenty sharp. There's plenty of great tutorials and videos. In fact, I've made one for steeling. But you want to do this in between every couple items you cut, and generally before and after each time you use your knife. Make sure you wipe off your knife on a towel after doing so, because it does add little bits of metal shave off. Microscopic, you'd never be able to taste it, but definitely want to wipe it off. Alright, we'll move on to our onion next. This will be nice and simple. Just going to cut it in half and then cut it on the bias to get some half juliennes of onion. I like my onion closer to raw in my dishes. That's very much personal preference. You can cook it all the way down. You can barely cook it. You can not cook it at all. I like to cook mine just barely. Alright, moving on to the bok choy and snap peas. The sugar snap peas, I already removed the ends on. Very simple to prep. You just cut off the ends. It's going to kind of rough chop these. A little bit of a bias. Snap peas are great texture and great flavor, though they barely need to cook. In fact, they're really great raw, so you don't want to go too crazy. Wow, that's a strong onion. I don't want to cry. Alright, now the bok choy. It's kind of a weird piece of bok choy. I'm going to cut this in half and then kind of remove the core this way, since the core is so big in this one. Kind of weird. Alright, I usually treat the greens and the white part of the bok choy a little differently. So we're going to cut off the greens and just kind of shred that. The greens will wilt down, kind of like spinach. And for this, we'll make some rings. Okay. We're going to clean up our station, and then we'll talk about the order we're going to cook everything in. Okay. Alrighty. Man, that was a nuclear onion. Crazy strong. Okay, so the things that we have to cook for this dish is we have to cook the garlic, ginger, and scallions, the onions, the bok choy, snap peas, and snap peas. So I lay these out in specific order. I'm going to put all this stuff in at the end since it kind of just wilts and barely cooks. So we're going to start with, hold on a second, I forgot an ingredient. Can't forget the mushrooms. Where did I put them? Almost forgot the mushrooms. So I'm just going to cut these in half and give them a little quick slice. We're going to cook the garlic, ginger, and scallions, then add the mushrooms, then add the onions, then add the bok choy and snap peas, and hopefully everything cooks out right. Kind of trying to judge how stuff's going to cook is one of the harder parts about cooking. It just takes some practice more than anything. All right. Looks good. Mushrooms always look like a lot, but they cook down to almost nothing. Okay, let's talk about the order one more time. We're going to start with this to flavor our oil. Then we're going to add the mushrooms, which will soak up that oil and become a flavor bomb. Then we're going to add our onions. Then we're going to add the bok choy and snap peas. And then we'll finish with garnishing with scallions. Alrighty, so we're going to head over to the stove. We're going to bring everything over there. Do it one bit at a time here. We'll lay it out in the order we want to do it, too. Okay. So in reality, this is a very simple dish, and the simpler you get, the more important the execution is in most cases. So, I'm going to lay everything out in a line the way we want to do it. And there it is. All right, we're going to add our oil to the pan and get it heating up. Having a relatively hot pan is good for this application. You don't want it to be scorching like you would for searing a piece of meat or something, because you do want to give the garlic, onion, scallion time to cook and flavor that oil. So we're going to add a little more. So how do you tell when oil's heated up? Well, it can be difficult, but it starts moving very quickly once it gets hot enough. You can also toss a little something in the oil. You could take a piece of mushroom and dip it in and see if it sizzles or not. It's a good way to go. You can also put a tiny smidge, like a flick of water in the pan. You want to do that before you add the oil, though. So if you want your pan to get hot before you add the oil, heat it up, and then if you throw water and it starts dancing, it's good. But of course, oil and water do not mix well. Now, the oil's starting to move a little bit faster now, but it's not quite there. So we're going to be patient. This is one of the most important parts about cooking anything if you need a hot pan, is take your sweet time and wait for your oil to be hot enough. We'll just be patient. I'm going to step over here and just clean off my cutting board real quick in the interim. And then my oil should be hot enough. Looking good. Since we're not searing anything here, I can say this is definitely hot enough. I don't need to get a brown on any of this. A nice sizzle. So this ginger, garlic, and scallion will flavor all of the oil in the pan. This is going to lay the base of flavor for the entire dish. You can definitely adjust this to your own taste. I love all of these ingredients, so I'm going quite heavy on it. It'll take about 30 seconds or so, but you'll get this amazing fragrance that comes off the ginger, and that's when you know it's sautéed enough to add other ingredients. The only thing you can mess up on this recipe really is burning the garlic. Burnt garlic is a flavor you can never cover up. Burnt garlic is just, it's gross. Brown garlic is great, but if you get to the burnt point, that's it. So I'm just going to keep it moving around. Let it liquefy a little bit. And there's that fragrance I was looking for. Now we're going to add the mushrooms. Mushrooms act like sponges in a lot of cases. We're not going to do anything crazy like brown the mushrooms for a long time here. We just want to get them barely cooked, have them absorb a bit of that oil, and then start to release their moisture. It should take about a minute or so for them to start cooking the way I'd like, and then we can add other things. So keep in mind the moisture content of the stuff you cook too. Mushrooms seem kind of dry, but they actually hold a lot of water, as do onions. So we want to make sure that we don't end up with a muddy mess at the end of it, which is why we're not cooking the mushrooms all the way. The mushroom is starting to look a little bit wet on the outside, which is what I wanted. Now we're going to add our onion. Onion releases its moisture very quickly. So once they start cooking, it'll wet the pan a bit, and that'll stop any of the garlic from burning at all. It's going to be a lot of veggies to how many noodles I have. That's how I like my dishes. If you like lots of noodles, by all means, cook more. But I find the best flavor comes from the veggies. If you put too many noodles, it absorbs all the sauce, and then you lose a lot of that flavor. This dish is great for a beginner because it doesn't require any technique where you need to brown things, which is one of the harder parts to nail on cooking. Really, you're just adding everything and cooking it about halfway, and then adding the sauce and letting it finish off. So what I'm looking for here is the onions to become slightly opaque. They'll start to become a little more translucent, and that means they're starting to cook. So a couple of different terms when it comes to onions. Sweating the onions means they look slightly wet on the outside, which they do right now. Opaque means that they're just starting to turn, and then fully cooked, they'll be basically see-through. That is smelling good. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to taste a mushroom. The ginger and garlic is all there, and you can tell that the mushroom absorbed a bit of that oil. Very flavorful, very good. We don't want to adjust salt content until after we add the sauce, as we're using 2 types of soy sauce, which is going to add a lot of salt. It's very plausible that it won't be salty enough, but if we add salt now and then add the sauce afterwards, we could have a very bad time. Oversalting food is one of the worst mistakes you can make. You can't undo it. There's nothing to undo too much salt. You can always add more, though. There's very few applications where the salt is so important to add early. It's very few. Okay, so now I've added our bok choy and sugar snap peas. We're just going to look for a slight wilt on the green leaves. And then we're going to add our noodles and sauce, and everything should finish cooking right about the same time. The real trick for this one is to figure out when to put stuff in the pan. And it's a great practice recipe because there's nothing in here you can mess up all that bad. If you overcook one of these vegetables, it's not going to taste awful. But really, you can use any vegetables you want, carrots, whatever. Okay, so we have a slight opaqueness on our onions. They don't taste acidic anymore or burny when you eat them. I hope you can see that. Hold on. Slightly opaque, just barely. Okay. Now we're going to add our noodles. So they're pre-cooked. I just toss them in a little tiny bit of oil to make sure they didn't stick together. You can also run them under water after the fact to get them to unclump. I'm going to add our sauce. Now this sauce has sugar in it, so it will caramelize a little bit, and that's what you want. You do want the sauce to cook up just a smidge. I'm going to try a lifting, folding motion here to make sure the sauce gets integrated in the noodles. Work better than flipping at this point. Got a nice dark brown on the noodles, which probably means that my sauce level is just about right. But let's taste the noodle for science. It's pretty darn good. Still want to let the sugars caramelize just a little bit in the sauce to add a little more sweetness. You can always adjust your salt or sugar levels or whatever you want at this stage of the cooking. If you taste it, you say, man, that could be a little sweeter. Just sprinkle a little sugar in there and see what happens. If you can use a little more salt, either add some more salt or soy. Alrighty. About 30 more seconds and it's done. Alright. I thought I had all my meats together, but I forgot a few things. Usually happens, but you're better off having most of your stuff out and ready to go than having nothing. All right, now we're going to head back to the cutting board and plate it up, and then we'll have a finished dish. All right, so here is our dish. Going to put this on a cork board so I don't burn my stuff. Shame on me. All right, so here's our bowl. We're just going to take a little bit of the noodles, Give them a little twist. I can go a few more noodles than that. A nice clump of veggies. Then we're going to sprinkle the scallions on top. That's a big old boy. Alright. That's it. Pretty simple to cook. Even if you don't have much experience cooking, you should be at least attempt and make something that is very edible. And after a little practice, make something that's absolutely great. I'm going to step over to the camera and talk to you guys real quick. Alright, so I've cooked this recipe twice now, and there's something, I would change about it. I definitely change the sugar level in the sauce a little bit next time, maybe, to give it a try. Always experiment with your food and try new things. There is no such thing as a perfect dish. While you may make something edible or something you think is good, always think, what can I do different next time? Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, but to be a good cook, all you have to do is continue cooking and continue analyzing your food. That's all you gotta do. I'd say after 4 or 5 more times cooking that dish, I'd be really happy with it. It's a great dish as is, but don't be afraid to cook. Don't be afraid to change the recipe. Don't be afraid to think outside the box. Try new things, expand your palate, and enjoy the food. That's all we're going to have for Cooking with Frag today. Going to hop downstairs in just a minute after I change for some video game content. Thank you all for making this possible. Had a blast doing it tonight. That's all I got for now. Frag out.